And hi, everyone, and welcome to our November episode. Hope you enjoyed the Samhain season and the Halloween for those of you in the U.S., and that you had a chance to enjoy the festivals that were going on, and that you're looking forward to the holidays coming up here in November and December. And we have a pretty good episode, I think, coming up here. We're going to be talking about all the events we've got going up for the month of November. And if you've ever heard of the Red Book of Ossory, well, we've talked to somebody recently about the book itself and the fact for the first time ever it is now on public display, and we'll give some details and all that coming up here in just a bit. Let's get back to what we've got coming up here for the month of November. Our Irish Saturday for the month of November will be held on November 9th, so stop on by the Hoffman Research Library, which is located at the Minnesota Genealogy Center in Mendota Heights, Minnesota. Now, here's an opportunity to get some of your Irish research questions answered. The Minnesota Genealogy Center is located at 1385 Mendota Heights Road, Suite 100. You can also stop by the library during regular business hours. To find out more about the library and hours of operation, go to the website at mngs.org. And our November monthly webinar will feature Jane Kennedy. The title of Jane's program is called The Connemara of County Galway, Despair in the American Heartland. This is an online webinar-only event, and the date for this event is November 16th. Jane will be talking about many in the western coastal areas of Connemara who were given some assistance in 1880 to escape the ravages of famine and disease. However, they knew very little about their new destination. They hoped to find a new homeland in America, but after 3,700 miles of travel, their destination in rural Minnesota was found to be a prairie that scarcely resembled the Irish coast. As they settled in and began earning a living, they soon encountered one of the worst Minnesota winters ever recorded. Many others found similar stories. Now sit in and hear about Jane's journey uncovering this story, which could suggest to you new approaches for your researching your Irish ancestors, no matter what their county of origin was. You can register on the IGSI website at irishgenealogical.org. Again, the date is November 16th. So when we talk about Irish history and culture that came out of the history of Ireland, how far back are we talking about? Well, recently, a book that's called the Red Book of Ossory has been placed on public display for the first time ever, and you can find it over at the Cathedral, St. Canice Cathedral at Kilkenny. And that dates back several centuries, and you get some interesting information from this book in particular and how its origin began. The book contains poems and songs written and composed by Richard de Ledrede, who was the Bishop of Ossory at the time, and it dates back some 700 years and contains even some of the earliest known recipes for distilling whiskey, or as they refer to as the aqua vitae, or the water of life. And at that time, it was used for medicinal purposes due to the Black Plague that was engulfing Europe at the time. Dr. Susan Hood is the librarian and archivist at the Representative Church Body Library in Dublin. The library has archived the Book of Ossory for years and is now making the book available to be seen by the public.
The library where I'm based has sources that are used by the genealogical world, particularly the registers, but we have a large range of other records, including manuscripts from medieval times to modern times, documenting a whole range of. One of those, probably one of the most precious documents held by the library, is the book known as the Red Book of Ossory. And essentially it's a diocesan source. The Church of Ireland is broken up into, as you will know, there are many different parishes, but it's also the bigger geographical territory is the diocese. So there were nearly 30 historical dioceses. Today there are just 11. And one of those, a very important one, right in the centre of Ireland, was Ossory, which centred on the city of Kilkenny. And in the 14th century, in the aftermath of various tumultuous things that were happening, not least the Black Plague had occurred, which affected many thousands of people throughout Ireland, but particularly the city of Kilkenny. So this reforming bishop, Bishop Ledrede, is appointed by the Pope, because, of course, we're talking about the Irish Church before there's a Reformation. So it's just the early Irish Church. And the Pope brings in Ledrede, probably from somewhere in the south of England, but he had also connections with France. And he was the only Franciscan to be appointed Bishop of the Irish Church. And he's a great reformer. He's a very learned man. He has several languages. And part of that reform is to write things down and account for things and gather the information together. And that's really what the Red Book is. It's his volume, it's his administrative record. And it's known as the Red Book because, and it has been known by that title, really going all the way back to when scholars in the 17th, 18th century started to study it, because of its red cover. So it's got boards, it's stitched, beautifully stitched with leather. And then that the outside cover was actually, and indeed the content of the folios or the pages is vellum, probably some kind of sheepskin. But the outside of the volume would originally have been this bright red. Now, over the course of the centuries, the red on the outside of the book has worn away. But when you open the boards, you can still see the red dye. Probably an animal blood dye of some kind was used. And according to experts in the field, and most particularly, and the RCB Library is very lucky that we've been going all the way back to the 1990s when this book was salvaged and conserved by Dr. John Gillis of Trinity College Library. And he's advised us, as well as caring for this book, as well as making a box to keep it safe then, and continuous involvement in its in this journey to bring it back for display. John has advised that 2% of books of this era survive, but of that 2%, only about 2% show evidence of their original binding. And so in an Irish context, the actual structure of this book is just unique, absolutely unique, and very, very important.
The book itself contains, as I understand it, poems and songs that the bishop had composed. And so there's a lot of information that tells about how life was back then. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, a couple of things. We'll come back to the Black Plague and the general health of people, but Ledrede, as part of his reform, he felt the society had become quite secularized and people needed to be brought back to their faith. And it was very much about, he was quite critical of people hanging out in the pubs and drinking houses or whatever, and trying to bring them back to a more good living, through this poetry.
And then one of the other things that it contains is the use of the word distillery, and that's some of the earliest that we've ever seen that word used in regarding to whiskey, but that was more, as I understand it, more medicinal back then.
That's right. I mean, Ledrede comes to Ireland and he comes to Kilkenny at a very difficult time. Society's been absolutely ravaged by the Black Plague, and it's kind of poignant. And in fact, the whole project to bring the Red Book back to Kilkenny was delayed because of COVID. So there's, a nice similarity, if you like. And Ledrede was trying to help the people in distress. And he was communicating with his fellow Dominicans who must have shared with him this process. So the 2 pages that are devoted to the distillation process, a 16-step guide to how you purify, distill water for medicinal purposes. And the first of those pages begins with the words aqua vitae. In fact, there's a lovely little, like a medieval post-it. He actually, or whoever, the clerk who actually wrote the words, has a little thumb beside the words aqua vitae. So it's a very, very important bit of the book. And it is a guide for medicine. Christmas time, I believe they're going to turn. We're going to turn the pages. This is to keep ensure that the book gets a chance to relax and it's not exposed, although it is in a case and everything like that. And then there are 2 other. I'll keep listeners in suspense. There will be 2 other openings for later in the year.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah. And well, again, they reflect different aspects, political and social aspects of life, but all worth viewing. And even if you can't see the other gatherings in the display case, there's stories about them as told in the exhibition as a whole. And St. Canice is I was down there just a couple of weeks ago with a group. And it's a beautiful cathedral. It's very beautiful light that is very atmospheric. It's created by the black Kilkenny marble. There's quite a lot of that, quite a lot of stone. And then, of course, as well as the cathedral, you can visit the adjacent round tower. I hope people will go and see it. Kilkenny's a great day out, and there's lots to see. The castle, the medieval mile, and now the cathedral really has something, to show. Something for everybody to see.
Hello and welcome back to the Irish History Minute with Irish Genealogical Society International. Today we'll be talking about a topic many in the diaspora have some awareness of: anti-Irish sentiment in America in the 1800s. Most of us have seen the historical signs or newspaper ads that say "No Irish need apply" or similar. And there was no shortage of political cartoons mocking the Irish people. The reason for this, quite simply, comes down to 2 things. First, the English roots of American colonies and an ongoing anti-Catholic, anti-immigrant sentiment. And second, the mass influx of Irish immigrants in the wake of the famine in the 1840s. When the famine hit, America was not far from their war for independence, and there were still living people who were alive when American states were British colonies. In fact, British attitudes towards the Irish, and Irish attitudes towards the British, were a huge contributing factor to the discrimination Irish immigrants faced in America. Protestant Irish and Lutheran Germans immigrating at the same time as Catholic Irish did not face the same backlash. And because of Irish rebellions against the British back in Ireland, many Americans saw them as terrorists who would cause violence. The American political party, the Know-Nothings, were formed in the 1840s with a vow to elect only native-born, non-Catholic citizens. They even had a slogan of "Americans must rule America," and in Massachusetts passed laws requiring public schools to read the King James Bible. Occasionally, this friction resulted in physical violence, such as the Bible riots of 1844, of deadly anti-Irish mobs in Philadelphia. In New York, what happened in Philadelphia had the Archbishop John Hughes stationing armed Hibernians to guard churches. The Civil War began to change things for the Irish in America. The Irish served in the military during the Civil War on both sides, although the English support of the Confederacy and the fact that many Irish had settled in the North led to more serving on the Union side. Of an estimated 200,000 Irish soldiers serving in the war, it's believed 180,000 were Union soldiers. Since finding work was a challenge for new Irish immigrants, joining the military to earn money changed the fortunes of many, although, of course, unfortunately, others had their fortunes changed in other ways, such as injury or death. After the Civil War, the large numbers of Irish in America used a powerful weapon to gain a better footing in their new home: voting. Irish immigrants were more likely to vote than other immigrant groups in proportion to their overall numbers, and because of the large influx of Irish to America in the mid-1800s, this allowed them to elect Irish Catholics such as William R. Grace as mayor of New York City in 1880, and Hugh O'Brien as mayor of Boston in 1884, the first Irish Catholics to hold these roles. Beyond political influence, another factor which the Irish had no control over reduced anti-Irish sentiment across America in the late 1800s, the arrival of immigrants from China and Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, as Irish Americans desired to move up the food chain in America, they sometimes targeted these new immigrants. Politician Dennis Carney, born in County Cork, when speaking to American laborers, would close his speeches with, "Whatever happens, the Chinese must go." An 1882 political cartoon shows an Irish American and a German American asking, "What color is to be tabooed next?" That's it for today's Irish History Minute. If you want to learn more, members of IGSI can find an article on this topic in the next issue of our e-newsletter, Genialis. Thanks for listening.
And that's our episode for the month of November. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for Dr. Susan Hood for a wonderful episode on the Red Book of Ossory. And if you're in Kilkenny anytime in the next few months, hope you have a chance to see it as well. And thanks to Janelle for a wonderful Irish History Minute as well. And hope to see you coming up, believe it or not, the end of the year, coming up a month from now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month. And as we head into the end of 2024, the Irish Genealogical Society International needs your assistance to continue our important mission by reaching our fundraising goal this year. Every donation, regardless of size, helps us reach our goals and enhance what the IGSI can offer. Thank you for your donation. And if you're not a member of the IGSI but would like to be, here's all you have to do. Head to the website at irishgenealogical.org. There you'll find the Join link on the left side of the page, and that's where you can sign up and become a member. You can also register for any of the webinars this year on the website as well, and as a member you can also see past webinars from the previous year. And besides enjoying all the members' benefits, you can always sign in and go over many of the programs and services that the IGSI has to offer, and that would include viewing past webinars, surname interests, the e-newsletter. Would you like to be a volunteer at the IGSI? Here's all you have to do. Get on the website at irishgenealogical.org and scroll down to the volunteer link. There you can see all the options that are available to you. That would include helping out with the Irish Fest in Minnesota, or any of the social and educational programs, or you could even help out with the social media platforms and podcasts, or the SEPS magazine and Genialis newsletter. Just click on the Volunteer Now link and sign up. For more information about the Irish Genealogical Society International, go to the website at irishgenealogical.org. And for questions regarding the podcast, send an email to podcast@irishgenealogical.org.